Hello, my name is Philippe Girard, a professor in the history department at McNeese State University.
And I'm Rebecca Harris, a local school teacher and theater actress. And you're listening to Your Grandma Rocks, where we explore the lives of famous women in history.
Welcome and bienvenue à nos amis francophones. Vous écoutez la radio de l'Université McNeese.
On the program today, music and history as we retrace the life of a remarkable woman. She was the first female prime minister of India.
And an anti-communist.
Or maybe she was a socialist.
And the leader of the largest democracy in the world.
Or maybe a tyrant.
And the daughter of a non-violent leader.
Or maybe a warmonger. Either way, she was one tough cookie with a fascinating life. Her name was
Indira Gandhi.
Along the way, we'll sample a few songs. I assume you have a bunch of Bollywood music on your sets list?
Actually, I just did a show with you on another Indian lady, Roop Kanwar, that featured a ton of Bollywood music. So today I will feature songs from Western movies that are set in India. And we'll start with Paper Planes from the 2008 British movie Slumdog Millionaire.
If you catch me at the border, I got visas in my name. If you come around here, I'll make them all day. I get one down in a second if you wait. I fly like paper, get high like planes. If you catch me at the border, I got visas in my name. If you come around here, I'll make them all day. I get one down in a second if you wait. Sometimes I think sitting on trains. Every step I get to, I'm clocking that game. Everyone's a winner, we're making our fame. Bonafide hustler, making my name. Sometimes I think sitting on trains. Every step I get to, I'm clocking that game. Everyone's a winner, we're making our fame. Bonafide hustler, making my name. All I wanna do is take your money. 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 Pirates, skulls and bones, sticks and stones and weed and bombs. Running when we hit 'em. Lethal poison for the system. Pirates, skulls and bones, sticks and stones and weed and bombs. Running when we hit 'em. Lethal poison for the system. No one on the corner has swagger like us. Hit me on my banner, prepaid wireless. We pack and deliver like UPS trucks. Already going hell, just pumping that gas. No one on the corner has swagger like us. Hit me on my banner, prepaid wireless. We pack and deliver like UPS trucks. Already going hell, just pumping that gas. All I wanna do is take your money. All I wanna do is take your money. All I wanna do is take your money. All I wanna do is take your money.
Bonjour and welcome back to Your Grandma Rocks. Je m'appelle Philippe Girard.
And I'm Rebecca Harris, and today we're exploring the life of the first female prime minister of India, Indira Gandhi. We just had a show on the suicide of widows in India, and the country didn't come across to me as very progressive when it came to gender issues. So how did she get to the top?
Well, the grand total of female presidents in the US is 0, so we can't afford to be too judgmental about the politics in India. At least India had one female leader. But in her case, being the daughter of a former prime minister, that did help a lot in getting the top job.
Let me guess, she was the daughter of the Mahatma Gandhi?
That would seem logical, but no, she was not the daughter of Gandhi. She was the daughter of the other independence leader, Jawaharlal Nehru.
Now I'm confused. Let's just start at the beginning. Where was she born?
1917.
So at the time when India was still a British colony.
Right, and her father, Nehru, he was a leading figure of the Indian National Congress, the pro-independence party.
The one that did protests like boycotting British cotton textiles.
That was the one. So Indira Gandhi, she would have witnessed a struggle for independence firsthand as a kid. She even knew the Mahatma Gandhi.
So, what was it like growing up in the shadow of a famous political figure like Nehru?
Well, lonely. Her dad was gone a lot because, he had the whole getting independence from India thing going on.
Oh, I hate it when dads do that. They have to change the history of the world and then they're late for dinner. Did she have any siblings?
She had a brother, but he died young, so not really.
And what about her mother?
Well, the mother had health issues and she died fairly young too, so again, not as much emotional support as you would want for the young Indira Gandhi. School could have been a way to make friends, but Indira Gandhi was mostly homeschooled by tutors.
So overall, a lonely childhood. Still, I assume she didn't suffer from poverty compared with the average Indian.
Oh no, definitely a privileged background. She wasn't your slumdog millionaire, rags to riches kind of story. For college, she attended a bunch of fancy schools in Europe, including Oxford.
What did she study?
Well, history mostly because, well, it's the best degree in the world. And also Latin, but apparently she was really, really bad at it.
India has like dozens of languages, plus English, so knowing Latin doesn't seem super useful in the first place. Which time period are we talking about?
Well, by that time she was a student, so late 30s, early 1940s.
So, World War II then. Did that impact her life at all?
Oh, I did. She was in Switzerland for school when the Nazis invaded France, so she got stranded there. And it took her months to find a way back to England, and eventually she had to drop out of Oxford University altogether and return to India. One positive thing, though, while she was in England, she met her future husband, Feroze Gandhi.
Oh, hence the name Gandhi. Was he related to the famous Mahatma Gandhi?
No, that was just a coincidence.
Weird. Any kids together?
Well, they had two sons who later played a big part in their mother's political career, Rajiv and Sanjay.
We'll get to that in due time. Time for song number 2. What's next on your list?
Here's a song from the Wes Anderson movie Darjeeling Limited. This is Where Do You Go To, My Lovely, by Peter Sosted.
You talk like Marlene Dietrich, and you dance like Zizi Jeanmaire. Your clothes are all made by Balmain, and there's diamonds and pearls in your hair. Yes, there are. You live in a fancy apartment off the boulevard Saint-Michel, where you keep your Rolling Stones records and a friend of Sacha Distel. Yes, you do. But where do you go to, my lovely, when you're alone in your bed? Tell me the thoughts that surround you. I want to look inside your head, yes I do. I've seen all your qualifications you got from the Sorbonne, and the painting you stole from Picasso. Your loveliness goes on and on, yes it does. When you go on your summer vacation, you go to Juan-les-Pins with your carefully designed topless swimsuit. You get an even suntan on your back and on your legs, and when the snow falls you're found in Samoritz with the others of the jet set, and you sip your Napoleon brandy, but you never get your lips wet, no you don't. But where do you go to, my lovely, when you're alone?
Welcome back. I'm Rebecca Harris, co-host of Your Grandma Rocks, your favorite women's history show on KBYS.
Et je suis Philippe Girard, vous écoutez la radio de l'Université McNeese.
Today we're exploring the life of Indira Gandhi, the first female prime minister of India. So far we've retraced her early life as a rich but lonely girl in India and England in the 1920s and 30s.
And as the daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru, a leading figure in the struggle for the independence of India.
We got to the end of World War II, by which point Indira Gandhi was married with 2 sons. Remind me, which year did India get independence?
1947, which is when her dad became the first prime minister of independent India, of course.
I've always found the independence of India to be a fascinating topic. I mean, here was a colony of several hundred million people, the crown jewel of the British Empire, and yet Gandhi and Nehru managed to obtain independence through nonviolent protests without shedding a drop of blood.
Well, almost. As you know, India is home to many religions.
Yes, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, you name it.
Yeah, and so the big question at independence was, how do you run a country when its 2 main religious groups, Hindus and Muslims, have not gotten along well, historically speaking?
I see two potential scenarios. Either they have to learn to live together or just give up. Split the country in two and give each religious group its own country.
Well, these were basically the two options. The Mahatma Gandhi, he would have loved to keep the country together as one big multicultural melting pot. But he was overruled, and India was split into two countries, partition. There was India proper, which was majority Hindu.
I.e. the country where Indira Gandhi's father became prime minister.
That's the one. But then the northwestern and eastern parts of India became a separate Muslim majority country known as Pakistan. And that process was called partition.
Did you have any Muslims who lived in the India side of the border, or vice versa? I mean, population boundaries are rarely neat, so drawing a line could be tricky.
Oh, it was a mess. Many Hindus and Muslims got stranded on the wrong side of the border, so there was an outbreak of religious violence right after independence. Hundreds of thousands of people got killed, and millions more had to flee to the country that matched their own religion. So independence was achieved through nonviolent protests, but the aftermath was not a 100% peaceful process.
But back to Indira Gandhi. What role did she play now that her dad was prime minister? By that point, she was a full-grown woman.
She was very active in his government. She served as special assistant to her dad, which gave her a front row seat to all the important events of the time. And then she became the leader of the party, the Indian National Congress.
The group that had pushed for independence from Britain.
Right, and now that was the dominant political party in India.
Politically, where was that party? Right? Left?
Officially, none of the above. Nehru, her dad, he was a big proponent of the non-aligned movement. That was an attempt by newly independent countries like India to remain neutral in the Cold War.
So not pro-US, but not pro-Russian either.
Yes, though in practice, Indira Gandhi herself, she strongly opposed local communists in India.
That would seem to make sense, given her privileged background. So far, she's been in the shadow of her famous dad, so where did she get the top spot?
Well, her father died in 1964 to begin with. And then in 1966, the Indian National Congress picked her, Indira Gandhi, as the next Prime Minister of India.
So, 1966, the year when her career truly took off. Talk about a big step forward for women in India.
Well, almost. She was not exactly picked for her smarts.
What do you mean? She was picked because of her looks?
Not that either. The party bosses assumed that because she was just a woman, she would be easy to control and manipulate.
Oh, like a puppet.
Exactly. Her nickname was Gungi Gudia, which means the stupid doll.
Barbie for the president. That's mean. But I assume that if you picked her as the topic for today's show, she turned out to be more than a stupid bimbo.
You'd be right. But before we study her tumultuous tenure as Prime Minister of India, let's take our third musical break.
Back to your general theme, songs from Western movies set in India.
Almost. This one is by a Western band that wrote a bunch of songs while attending a spiritual retreat in India in 1968, just around the time when Indira Gandhi became Prime Minister.
Is that band famous?
Just a little Liverpool outfit called the Beatles.
I may have heard of them. Which songs did they write in India?
Well, some pretty famous ones.
Who
like
became the Prime Minister of India in 1966. Before our break, we saw that she got the job mostly because her dad was famous and also because party bosses were convinced that they could easily control her, which means she had a lot to prove. So how did Indira Gandhi do in office?
Initially, not so well. Food prices were way up, so was unemployment, and people were not happy with the state of the economy.
That doesn't surprise me. In the 1940s and 50s, when there was that big wave of decolonization in Africa and Asia, people assumed that former colonies would do great after being freed from the shackles of foreign rule. But in practice, poverty was still the norm. There's a reason why Third World or the Global South is synonymous with poor countries nowadays. So, what was her recipe for economic development? We've already established that she was strongly anti-communist.
Amazingly, her economic policies were pretty far left. She accused the rich of being the cause of India's troubles. So she talked of nationalizing the big banks, and she established welfare programs for the poor.
So maybe she wasn't really committed to a specific ideology. Maybe she did whatever might help her remain in power.
I would definitely describe her as a pragmatist or an opportunist, yes.
Big welfare handouts to the poor would also seem like a great way to get political support, especially if you make sure to tell everyone that the money is coming from you.
To be fair, that would not be the first time that a politician did that. There's even a name for it. That's called patronage.
Same thing with getting a leg up in your career because you have a famous relative. We do have two presidents named Adams and Roosevelt. and Bush.
You're right. Let's not set the standard too high just because she's a female trailblazer.
And what about her foreign policy?
Well, the dominant issue of her time was India's conflict with Pakistan.
Wait, those two were still fighting? I thought Hindus and Muslims each got their country at independence. End of story.
Well, if only it were that simple. For one thing, there was a border dispute over the province of Kashmir.
I've heard of that one.
And also, when Pakistan was created, that country included two parts. There was one in the northwest and another bunch in the east, in the Bengal region near Calcutta. So Pakistan was a weird two-part country with India stuck in the middle.
Well, there's a bit of the U.S. over in Alaska and Canada in the middle, and no one seems to mind.
No, but again, the U.S. and Canada, they have a better relationship than India and Pakistan historically. But anyway, in 1971, the eastern part of Pakistan decided to go its own way and declare independence. Indira Gandhi sided with a breakaway province, if anything, just to annoy Pakistan. And then with the military assistance of India, the eastern part of Pakistan became its own country, and that's how today we have Bangladesh.
So much for being neutral. I thought that Indira Gandhi and her dad were big supporters of the non-aligned movement.
Well, she watered down her dad's neutral policy significantly when she was prime minister. Pakistan received weapons from the US, and so Indira Gandhi turned to the Russians for help.
And so much for her anti-communist credentials, too. We're back to her being a pragmatist above all. I guess the U.S. didn't appreciate seeing a key country like India fall in the communist orbit.
I will quote Richard Nixon on that one. Quote, "That woman suckered us." And also, quote, "She's a witch," which I'm pretty sure he spelled with a B.
Oh, you know you're successful when a U.S. president cares about you enough to hate you.
Under Indira Gandhi, India also developed the nuclear bomb to scare away another strategic rival, China. So, long story short, you're right, she had a number of enemies abroad.
What about inside India? The country had just emerged from Mughal rule and then British rule, so I'm sure her people were proud to see India standing strong again.
Well, victory in that 1971 war with Pakistan, that sure made her popular for a while. But then she faced a bunch of legal problems at home. I'll spare you the details, but essentially she was found guilty of campaign finance irregularities, various electoral shenanigans, and also using the government to help her political campaigns.
Well, I'm sure Richard Nixon would have appreciated that. Was she impeached or something?
In a way, yes. A court banned her from serving as deputy, which normally should have forced her to resign from the job of prime minister as well. But then she said something completely unexpected.
Which is?
Nope, ain't gonna leave.
Just like that. Isn't India a democracy? Isn't that something like the rule of law?
Well, that's where we get to the period of her life that is a bit controversial. She refused to step down, despite the court ruling, and instead she instituted a state of emergency, which basically gave her special powers to go after her political enemies and curtail freedom of the press.
Wow, and didn't Parliament object?
Well, they would have, except that she also postponed legislative elections indefinitely. So instead of elected officials, important decisions were taken by close allies like her son, Rajiv Gandhi.
Ooh, that's a long way from her initial image as a Barbie doll who could easily be manipulated. How long did the state of emergency last?
A long time, 1975 to 77. And then, only then, she finally agreed to organize elections because she was confident that she would win.
Too confident, maybe. People who are in power too long often live in a bubble, and they lose track of public opinion. How did she do in the election?
She lost, bigly.
I probably would have voted against her. India was getting awfully close to a dictatorship.
Well, to her credit, she did step down voluntarily after losing the election. But her career was not over yet.
We'll get to that after the musical break. What's next?
We'll go with Sajne Ve by the Bombay Rockers from the movie Outsourced.
Woo! This song is about that one true love. Drop the beat. Yeah. Now some of you out there, you know what I'm talking about, and you're gonna feel this track. Check it. I'm so in love, all that I got, I give it all up. Girl, I just don't wanna stop. I'm so high, you give me that vibe, I feel alive, just from one look in your eyes.
सजना वे तू मेरी ना घबरा मैं हूँ यहाँ रहेगी सदा तू मेरी सजना वे तू मेरी तू है जहाँ मैं हूँ वहाँ
think about is your brown eyes. Other girls, I've passed them by. I could never tell you no lies. Oh, I'm so in love, all that I got, I give it all up. Girl, I just don't wanna stop.
You're listening to Your Grandma Rocks on KBYS. I'm Rebecca
Je
Harris.
suis Philippe Girard. Today we are retracing the life of Indira Gandhi, who served as Prime Minister of India from 1966 until she lost an election in 1977.
Before our musical break, you hinted that her career was not yet over. How did she plot her comeback?
Well, one thing she had going for her is that the coalition that had beaten her at the polls had little in common, except for the fact that they hated her. So over the next few years, that coalition bickered and unraveled, which allowed Indira Gandhi to run again and win again. And so in 1979, she became Prime Minister for his second time.
She reminds me of Margaret Thatcher, another first female prime minister and another Iron lady.
I did another show about her. She also became Prime Minister in England, of course, in 1979. Great year for hot-ass women.
Based on what we've seen so far, I assume that her second term in office wasn't smooth sailing.
Oh no, a big crisis erupted when some Sikh separatists took over the Golden Temple in Amritsar, and then they barricaded themselves there.
For our listeners who may not be familiar with the Sikhs, they are yet another religious group from India. There's a lot of them in the Punjab region, which is where the Golden Temple is located. But back to the narrative. That crisis in the Golden Temple would have been a classic test for political leaders. At that point, you can search for a diplomatic solution like JFK did during the Cuban Missile Crisis, or bring out the big guns.
She picked number 2. She sent in the army.
To a religious shrine? It would be like sending tanks into the Vatican. That can't end well.
It did not. A good deal of the temple was destroyed and hundreds of people were killed, maybe thousands.
Wow, that can't have been popular in India.
Well, it depends. Some members of the Hindu majority, they didn't mind attacking a Sikh temple. But the Sikh minority, predictably, they were incensed. And she made a lot of enemies that day.
I think I know where this is going. Was she aware of the clouds gathering on the horizon?
Yes, on October 30th, 1984, she made a speech saying, quote, "I am alive today, I may not be there tomorrow," unquote.
And the next day?
Well, 2 of her bodyguards, who were Sikh, attacked her and killed her.
Wow, that's a brutal end to a tumultuous life. Let's take one last musical break and then analyze what our life means. Our last song is from which movie?
Bend It Like Beckham.
Wait, I thought this movie was set in the UK.
It is, but the main character is from a family of Sikh immigrants.
Sikh, like the people who killed Indira Gandhi.
Yes, though in the movie they're mostly interested in getting married and playing soccer, not murdering politicians. Anyway, here's Atomic by Blondie, as featured in the movie Bend It Like Beckham. By Blondie. Je m'appelle Philippe Girard.
And I'm Rebecca Harris, and today we retrace the life of Indira Gandhi, who ruled India from 1966 to 1977, and again from 1979 until her death in 1984. So how do you make sense of a life like hers? I assume that feminists love her. She's a role model for strong, independent women everywhere.
She
right?
is. Yeah, she is. Time magazine named her one of the 100 most powerful women of the 20th century. Or even the most important woman of the 20th century, according to a BBC poll. Strangely enough, though, she did not identify as a feminist. In her view, she was a political leader who happened to be a woman. She did not want to be identified as a female trailblazer.
She sure didn't fit the image of a female leader. I would have thought she would have focused more on issues like women's rights in India.
Not on her radar.
And less on issues like war with Pakistan or the nuclear bomb. You know the saying, women are from Venus and men are from Mars.
Well, that's a classic question. Are there differences in the way that men and women govern when they're in power? One political scientist, Jan Tickner, she argued that women, like the Egyptian pharaoh Hatshepsut, are less prone to go to war than male leaders. But Indira Gandhi, she does not fit the bill. She was from Mars.
Or Margaret Thatcher. When Argentina took over the Falklands, she didn't back down.
Obviously, we're dealing with a small sample because women have been a minority of the ruling class in history. But if there is a lesson from Indira Gandhi's life, it is that female leaders can be no different than men. For better or for worse.
That seems like a good way to conclude our show. What a life. We're glad we could share it with you.
Quelle vie incroyable, en effet.